A struggling single mom apologized for bringing her son on a blind date, but a CEO just smiled and said the cafe was quiet. One of those upscale spots tucked inside a glass building where golden light pulled softly around each table and smooth jazz filled the space. On any other night, it might have felt serene, but Ava Monroe's heart was pounding. She stepped in, holding her 5-year-old son, Liam, by the hand. Her white dress shifted gently with the breeze, elegant but modest. Her blondie hair was pinned back, though a few strands clung to her cheeks. She looked lovely, but tired, not from lack of rest, but from the weight of too many long days. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on him. Julian Cross. He looked exactly like the photo her friend had shown her. Sharp jawline, perfectly tailored suit, eyes the color of stormy skis. He sat straight, one hand resting on the table, composed but distant. Ava hesitated, then led Liam closer. "I'm so sorry," she began softly. "I couldn't find Danyan to watch him." "I totally understand." If before she could finish, Liam tilted his head, studying Julian. "You look like the man from the park," he said plainly. "Are you still sad?" Julian froze. The voice, the tone. It was the same. 2 years ago, a rainy night, a park bench, a bottle in his hand, a tiny boy with big eyes offering him a tissue and saying, "It's okay to cry." "My mom says hearts just need hugs sometimes." Julian had never forgotten that moment. Could never. That voice had anchored him. Now here that same voice stood living and breathing and looking up at him with quiet concern. Julian blinked, throat tight. Then slowly he smiled. "Don't apologize," he said, eyes still on Liam. "I think I owe your son Morethan, you know." Ava paused, confused. "I what?" Julian shook his head gently. "Please have a seat." Still unsure, she helped Liam into the smaller chair and sat across from Julian. Liam pulled out a small pack of crayons and started coloring on the kids' menu like this was any normal evening. Julian watched him for a long beat, something unreadable in his expression. "Oh, he's sweet," he murmured. Ava smiled. "He's my whole world." They sat quietly, the sounds of clinking cups and soft conversation surrounding them. Ava stirred her tea, uncertain how to start. She had not been on a date, if this even counted, in years. Julian leaned in slightly. "Has he always been this kind?" She glanced up. "What do you mean?" He nodded toward Liam, who was now helping the waitress pick up a spoon someone had dropped. "This gentle, this aware." Ava followed his gaze. "Yes, always. Even when he was little, he'd cry if another baby cried. He just feels things." Julian nodded, a small smile forming, but his eyes didn't match the smile. They held something else, a reverence, a quiet knowing. Ava shifted in her seat. "I hope he's not too much." I didn't want to cancel last minute, but Julian looked back at her. "He's not too much, and neither are you." Ava blinked. It had been so long since someone said that. She reached for her tea, hands slightly trembling. Juliana enticed but said nothing. "Look," Liam chirped, holding up his drawing. "It's his mommy, me, and you." Julian looked at the picture. 3 stick figures under a sun. One had long yellow hair. One wore a tie. The smallest held a balloon. A quiet warmth stirred in his chest. Ava chuckled nervously. "Includes everyone." Julian smiled. "I'm honored." For the first time Vening, the silence between them felt calm. Not strained, not strange, just safe. Ava leaned back, her fingers around the warm cup. Liam rested against their shoulder. Across the table, Julian watched, feeling something shift inside him. Sometimes a 5-year-old saves your life, and sometimes the universe sends him back to show you how to live again. 2 years ago, everything was different. The classroom smelled like crayons and construction paper. Ava Monroe stood at the whiteboard, chalk dust on her hands, surrounded by the giggles of second graders. Teaching had been her sanctuary, her joy. The walls were filled with color, student art, and fecund of warmth that made her feel like she belonged. But on that day, she did not go in. She had a sore throat. She'd her husband Daniel to pick up Liam from preschool. That one request unraveled everything. The accident was quick. A rainy intersection, a truck that skidded, a phone call that shattered her world. Daniel never came home. She remembered the phone slipping from her hand. Liam asking why Daddy was not back yet. The way she screamed into a pillow that night, so her son would not hear her fall apart. Grief did not just break her. It reshaped her. She took a leave from school just for a while, she told herself, but returning meant passing the desk where Daniel once left her coffee. It meant smiling through pain that refused to fade. She could not do it. Bills piled up. Sleep became a stranger. The once vibrant home turned quiet and cold. Eventually, she found work at a small bookstore. Quiet, unassuming, the kind-of place that asked nothing of her but presence. On slow days, she brought Liam. But even there, she apologized. "I'm sorry. He's just a little fussy today. I'm sorry. I'll need to leave early again. I'm sorry for the noise, the distraction, for everything." She said sorry often. It became reflex, a part of her voice. Her parents tried to help at first, but grief made them distant. Daniel had been their pride, their hope. And though no one said it aloud, she felt it. The blame, the weight of their disappointment. Friends slowly faded. Invitations stopped. Ava just endured. Only Liam seemed to see her fully. One night, as she tried to force a tired smile over burnt pasta, Liam tugged at her sleeve. "Are you okay when you smile like that?" he asked. She blinked, then kissed his forehead, too choked up to answer. Liam had always been like that, gentle, oddly perceptive for his age. When she looked tired, he would bring her a cookie. When she cried, he would crawl into her lap and just sit there wordless. He held her together with small invisible threads. He was the reason she woke up, the reason she kept lists, paid bills, faced days she did not want to. He was all shed left of Daniel. And somehow he was more than that. Still, Ava never stopped feeling like a burden. When she brought Liam to work, she apologized. When she dropped him off late at preschool. When she forgot to RSVP. When she dared to say she was tired or lonely, she apologized. It was not just grief over Daniel. It was grief over herself, who she had been, who she could have been. Now she simply tried to be enough for Liam. Some days it felt possible. Other days she felt like a shadow wearing her own skin. But she kept going, always, because Liam needed her. Even when the world made her feel invisible, even when the whispers stung, she showed up for him. Ava Monroe is not fearless. She was not perfect. She cried in the shower, worried about bills, and sometimes yelled when she meant to whisper. But she was present. And every night after Liam fell asleep, she kissed his forehead and whispered the only apology that mattered anymore. "I'm sorry the world makes it so hard, but I promise, I'm trying." And in Thedrick, with sleep tugging at his lashes, Liam would murmur back, "I know." 12 years ago, the rain came down in sheets, cold, relentless, and uncaring. Julian Cross sat on a weather-worn bench in the middle of an empty park, his 1,000 suits soaked through, his phone long dead, his mind a blank tunnel of noise. He had not meant to end up there. He had driven with no direction, no plan, only a growing ache in his chest that had become too loud to ignore. Hours earlier, he had walked out of a boardroom and into silence. His name scrubbed off the company he had built with his own hands, betrayed by his co-founder, cut out of his own vision, and as if the universe had decided to make a show of cruelty, she had left too. Madison, the woman he thought he would marry. She told him he had become too much, too distant, too broken. No one stays with a sinking ship. And Julian, he was sinking fast. That bench was supposed to be the last stop. The rain, a perfect metaphor. The world just distant enough to ignore his leaving. He sat there for what felt like hours, clutching a bottle he had not opened, could not let go of. His head in Hisham's, suit heavy with water, heart heavier with failure. That was when he heard the footsteps. Small, uneven, childlike. A boy, maybe 4, maybe 5, stood in front of him, holding a crumpled tissue in one hand and wearing rain boots far too big for his feet. His jacket was slightly crooked, zipped up wrong, his nose a little runny, but high-size wide, gentle, strangely calm. The boy reached out the tissue, his voice soft but clear. "Mister, it's okay to cry." Julian blinked. "My mom says hearts just need hugs sometimes." That one sentence cracked something inside him. Something deep. Something dark. Julian stared at the boy, stunned, water running down his face. Some of it rain, some of it not. He did not know what made the boy stop. He did not know where the mother was. But in that moment, for the first time in months, he felt seen. Not as a failure, not as a CEO, just as a man whose heart had caved in. He had not spoken. He could not. But he had taken the tissue with shaking fingers, and the boy had simply smiled, then turned and skipped away toward a woman waiting under a distant tree. Her face had been hidden by a large umbrella, her hand reaching out for the boy's. Julian never forgot that night. He never forgot the boy's voice, that kindness, that absurd, innocent truth. Hearts just need hugs sometimes. He did not end his life. Instead, he went home. He opened an book. And for the first time in weeks, he wrote down an idea about emotional resilience, about an eye that could understand human empathy. Not just read patterns, but feel intention. It was the start of something new, something slow, quiet, and deeply personal. He had always wondered about that boy. And now sitting across from Ava Monroe in that quiet cafe, Julian watched as her son colored dinosaurs with half-broken crayons. His small mouth moved as he whispered stories to himself. And then, like a bell tolling from another lifetime, he tilted his head, looked at Julian, and said, "You look like the man from the park. Are you still sad?" Julian's heart stopped. The voice, the eyes, the gentle knowing inside a small face. It was him. This was the boy. The boy who saved him. His throat tightened. His hands curled into fists beneath the table to keep from trembling. He swallowed, forcing his voice steady, and offered a quiet smile. "Don't apologize," he said to Ava. "I think I owe your son more than you know." He had not told her. Not yet. Somehow the words did not feel ready. But as Liam continued coloring, humming softly, Julian watched him, this small, unknowingly heroic child, and felt something he had not in a very long time. Gratitude, and maybe for the first time since that rainy night, hope. The invitation had come the next morning in simplest form, an email. Subject, dinner body. No pressure, just food. Maybe the 3 of us this time. Ava read it twice before showing it to Liam, who immediately grinned and said, "Does that mean he liked us?" She smiled and tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "I think it means he wants to know us better." They met at a quiet family-owned Italian place tucked between 2 brownstone buildings, warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. Julian was already there, seated at a corner booth, wearing something less corporate this time, just a button-up and a soft navy sweater. He stood when they arrived, helping Liam into the booths first before turning to Ava. "Thank you for coming," she nodded politely. "Thank you for inviting us." Dinner began with small talk. Liam ordered spaghetti and promptly declared it was better than Mum's. "But don't tell her." Ava laughed, a real sound this time, and Julian noticed the way her eyes crinkled when she did. Julian was quiet but attentive. He asked Liam questions about his favorite dinosaurs, and to Ava's surprise, listened patiently as the little boy explained in great detail, the difference between a Triceratops and a Stegosaurus. At one point, Ava excused herself to the restroom. When she returned, she paused near the corner of the hallway. Julian was leaning across the table, whispering something to Liam. "I think your mom is really brave," he said. Liam tilted his head. "She doesn't think so." "She will," Julian replied softly. Ava's chest tightened. She did not know what stirred more, the way he said it or the fact that he meant it. After dinner, Julian suggested a walk. "There's a park nearby. Liam might like the fountain." They agreed, strolling under the early evening sky. The city lights hummed, but in that little pocket of green, things felt still familiar. Liam ran ahead, chasing shadows and leaves. Ava and Julian walked side by side. For the first time, she noticed the quiet ease in his steps. Not the tension of a CEO passing through decisions, but the peace of someone trying. "You're different in it," she said. Julian looked over. "How so? Lighter?" He smiled, not the polite kind. "A real one." "Maybe I am." Then came the moment. Liam had paused to toad-mire a squirrel. And Ava glanced at Julian. "Are you lonely, Mr. Julian?" Liam asked, suddenly looking up. Julian blinked. His mouth parted slightly, surprised by the question. Then he crouched beside the boy, meeting his eyes. "I used to be." Liam nodded as if that made perfect sense, and returned to chasing squirrels. Ava watched the exchange in silence, something warming in her chest. Later that night, Julian stepped aside to take a call while Ava helped Liam wash his hands at the park restroom. On her way back, she passed by the bench where Julian stood. He was speaking softly, unaware of her presence behind the row of hedges. "It has been weeks since the last one," he said into the phone. "The nightmares are gone since then." A pause, then quieter. "No, I have not told her. I do not know how, but I know I am not the same." Ava froze. The words landed like a quiet thunderclap. Something in her shifted. He had been through something dark, and her son, maybe even she, had helped him find his way out. She walked back to the bench slowly, giving him time to end the call. When he turned and saw her, he looked slightly startled, but not guilty. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes." They said nothing else, but as they walked back toward the street, Ava slipped her hand down and gently took hold of Liam's. Julian walked beside them, close enough to touch, yet not imposing. And for the first time, she wondered, maybe this was not just a dinner. Maybe it was abogening. The lab was sleek and sterile, all white walls and glowing screens. Soft hums of machines layered under the quiet clicking of keyboards and murmurs of engineers. Julian stood near the glass entrance, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt as Ava and Liam stepped in. "This is impressive," Ava whispered, eye sweeping over the room. Julian smiled slightly, but his gaze had already shifted to Liam, who stared wide-eyed at the robot in the center of the room. It was about the size of a small refrigerator, humanoid in shape, but still mechanical. 2 blinking circles for eyes, arms with rounded joints, a soft plastic casing that gave it a child-safe appearance. "That's Eli," Julian said, short for Emotional Learning Interface. Liam's eyes lit up. "Does headache?" "Tries," one of the engineers said, chuckling softly. "But he is not very good at feelings yet." Julian led them closer. "We have been developing Ella for over a year. He is supposed to recognize emotional cues, facial expressions, tone, body language, and respond accordingly, but he struggles with unpredictability." Ava gave a sympathetic nod. "Sounds a little like parenting." Julian smiled again, more real this time. "Exactly." Liam stepped forward unprompted and crouched in front of Eli. The robot blinked slowly, then turned its head toward the boy. "Hello," Eli said in a flat tone. "How are you feeling today?" Liam tilted his head. "You sound nervous." I do not experience nervousness. You kind of do, Liam said, poking gently at the robot's foot. You talk like you are scared of saying the wrong thing. Julian and Ava exchanged a glance. I'm not mad, Liam added as if comforting a real person. Sometimes I get scared too. Like when I spill milk and I think Mom won't love me anymore. There was a sudden stillness in the room. Eli blinked again, then paused, an unnatural delay in his usual automated response. Julian's brow furrowed. Then Eli spoke again, but this time something was different. That must feel confusing, the robot said. Thinking glove can disappear when mistakes happen. But your mom still loves you, even with spilled milk. A hush fell over the lab. One of the engineers stood up from his console, stunned. That was not pre-coded. That was adaptive, responsive. That was Eli processing in real time. Julian stared at the robot, then at Liam, his pulse picking up. He had spent months with teams of experts, coding layers of empathy, language, and logic into that machine. They ran thousands of simulations, rewrote emotional response scripts, tweaked algorithms to mimic understanding. Nothing had worked until now. And all it took was a child telling the truth. Julian knelt slowly beside Liam. What made you say that? He asked gently. Liam shrugged, picking at a thread on his sleeve. Because it is true. I thought she would be mad, but she wasn't. She just hugged me. Julian's throat tightened. He looked up at Ava, who stood frozen near the table, one hand covering her mouth, eyes brimming. She had heard it too. The unfiltered wisdom of a 5-year-old, and the way it had unlocked something no team of engineers could. The robot, his robot, had finally worked. Not because of code or wires, but because of something human, something simple, something that had been missing all along. Julian stood, walking over to the main terminal. The data stream confirmed what he already knew. Eli had recognized the emotional subtext, interpreted the context, and generated a unique, emotionally attuned response. It had happened because of Liam, because of the boy who once saved him with a simple phrase in the park. Julian turned back to them, a look on his face that Ava had never seen before. Something between awe and humility. I ain't did it, Julian said quietly. He got through. Ava frowned slightly. Through to Therabot? No, Julian replied, voice rough. Through to me again. He walked over, crouched in front of Liam, and rested a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. Thank you, he whispered. Liam beamed, completely unaware of what he had just changed. And in that moment, Julian knew. This child was not just a miracle from Ava's past. He was the missing piece to Julian's future. It happened on a Tuesday. Ava had just returned from her lunch break at the small bookstore when her manager, an older woman named Helen, pulled her aside. The look on her face said everything. I am sorry, Ava, Helen began, not meeting her eyes. The higher-ups don't want children in the store during work hours anymore. They say it's unprofessional. Ava froze. Liam only stayed in the back with a coloring book. I know, Helen said gently. But rules are rules, and the owners are watching closely these days. I tried to fight for you, but Ava didn't cry. Not in front of Helen. She just nodded, packed up her things, and walked out with Liam's tiny hand clutched tightly in hers. That night, after Liam had fallen asleep, Ava sat at the kitchen table in silence. Bills stacked like guilt in a drawer she had not opened in days. She stared at them blankly, unsure what to do next. 2 days later, a letter arrived in her mailbox. It was from a local library. A part-time position had just opened, a children's reading assistant. The letter said she came highly recommended. Ava blinked. She had not applied. Something in her chest tightened. The next morning, she showed. Meet me tomorrow. Just us. Julian arrived at the quiet diner exactly on time. He looked tired in a way she had not noticed before. She did not offer small talk. I found out about the library, Ava said plainly. Julian paused, then nodded. I thought you would. She leaned forward, her voice low. Why didn't you tell me? He met her eyes steady. Because I did not want you to feel like you owed me anything. That's exactly what it feels like, she said, her voice sharper than she intended. Like I'm part of some emotional debt repayment plan. Julian's brows knit. That is not. Is this about gratitude? She asked, or guilt? The question hung between them, heavy and pointed. Julian leaned back slowly, the silence thick. Maybe both, he admitted. I do feel grateful for you, for Liam, but it isn't guilt, Ava, not pity. I just wanted to help. She stood. I didn't need saving, Julian. I needed honesty. He stood too instinctively, as if trying to reach her. But she had already turned. I can't do this, she said, barely above a whisper. Not I am always going to wonder why. She left, and Julian stood in the theaterway of the diner as rain began to fall outside. Soft at first, then stronger, soaking through his shirt. He made no move to run. For the first time in a long time, he felt helpless. Not because he had no power, but because power could not fix this. That night, Ava returned home soaked from the walk. She wrapped Liam in blankets and tucked him in, her heart aching, her mind spinning. The next morning, she opened her front door and nearly stepped on a paper bag, sitting quietly on her doormat. Inside was a book, Teaching with Heart, Lessons from a Classroom Soul. It was one of her favorites, a nude-off print copy she had lent to a student years ago and never saw again. And inside on the title page was a note written in Julian's clean handwriting. I didn't try to fix your life. I just wanted to thank the woman who taught her son how to save others. Ava stared at the words until her vision blurred. It was not an apology. It was not an explanation. It was love. Quiet, unspoken, but real. And though she would not text him back that day or the next, a part of her heart whispered what her pride could not yet say. He sees me, and that scared her more than anything else. It started with a fever. Ava had noticed Liam seemed unusually tired that evening, his cheeks flushed, his little hands clammy. She gave him medicine, thinking it was just a mild cold. But by midnight, his temperature had spiked dangerously. He was burning up, shivering, moaning in his sleep. She bundled him in a blanket and rushed to the nearest emergency room, calling everyone she could think of on the way, friends, neighbors, even her old manager. No one picked up. She hesitated in the last name in her contacts. Julian. They had not spoken since the night she walked away from him in the diner, but her hands were shaking. Her son was in danger. Pride had no place here. She hit call. It rang twice. Then he answered. Eva. His voice was groggy, confused. I'm sorry, she whispered, choking on the words. It's Liam. He's really sick. I'm at Mercy General. I didn't know who else. I'm on my way. The line went dead. Julian had been in the middle of his biggest presentation of the year. A packed auditorium, cameras rolling, investors watching. He did not think twice. He handed the microphone to his stunned assistant and walked off the stage. By the time he reached the hospital, it was pouring rain. Ava was sitting alone in the pediatric waiting room, hands clasped tightly, eyes red and unfocused. When she saw him, her breath caught. He said nothing. He simply sat beside her. 102.8, she murmured. They gave him fluids. They're running tests. Julian placed a steady hand on her back. He's strong. I was so scared. I know. When the nurse allowed them into the room, Liam lay small and pale in a hospital bed far too big for him. Wires connected to monitors, his lips dry and cracked. Ava sat on one side. Julian took the other. Without speaking, he reached out and gently took Liam's tiny hand. And there he stayed. All night. The hours passed slowly, marked only by the soft beeping of machines and the muted buzz of nurses' shoes outside the door. Ava dozed off in a chair, head tilted against the wall. Julian never moved. He held Liam's hand like it was the most important thing in the world. Around 6 a.m., Liam stirred. Julian straightened immediately, heart racing. The boy's eyelids fluttered open, his gaze unfocused at first. Then his small eyes locked onto Julian. "Hey buddy," Julian whispered, his voice cracking. Liam blinked. Then in a voice from sleep he whispered, "Dad." Julian froze. Ava sat upright, eyes wide. Liam's hand squeezed his. A soft smile tugged at the boy's lips. "Dad," he repeated, more sure this time. Gullen broke. The tears came before he could stop them. He bowed his head, pressing his forehead to Liam's tiny hand, shoulders trembling with silent sobs. He had not cried in years. Not even when he lost everything. Not when he stood alone in the rain, wondering if he was meant to survive. But this undid him. Behind the curtain, Ava stood frozen, watching. She should have stepped forward, said something. But the sight of Julian, this strong, stoic man, brought to his niece one small word. She could not interrupt that moment. Tears filled her own eyes as she turned away and pressed a hand to her mouth. For so long, she had carried everything alone. And now, for the first time, she was not alone anymore. She did not know what would happen next, whether they would talk again or forgive each other fully. But that moment, watching the man she once feared, only saw her as a burden, crying because her son had called him Dad. It was everything. A few weeks had passed since the hospital. Liam had bounced back quickly. Kids always did, but between Ava and Julian, things were quiet. Not cold, just careful. They exchanged a few texts, brief, polite, a thank you here, a hope you're well there, but nothing real. Nothing that said what they were truly feeling. Then in rainy afternoon, Ava found Liam sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, crayons scattered everywhere. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" "Sheest." Liam turned the page toward her. A drawing of 3 figures holding hands in a park. One with long yellow hair, one with a tie, one small holding a red balloon. "That's you," Liam said, pointing to the woman. "That's me, and that's Mr. Julian." Ava blinked. "Mr. Julian?" Liam nodded as if it were obvious. "He belongs." That night, after Liam went to bed, Ava sat at the table, staring at the drawing, eyes misty. The next morning, Julian appeared at her door. No flowers, no rehearsed speech, just a quiet smile. "Come with me," he said. They drove in silence. Liam hummed in the back seat. Julian parked near a quiet trail lined with golden leaves. Ava recognized it immediately. "This park," she whispered. He nodded. "I didn't bring you here by accident." They followed the path until Julian stopped, beside a bench beneath a tall oak tree. "I never told you the full story," he began. 2 years ago, I lost everything. I came here that night to end it." Ava's breath caught. Julian gestured toward Liam, who was nearby gathering leaves. Then a little boy walked up, handed me a tissue, said, "It's okay to cry. My mom says hearts just need hugs sometimes." Ava's hand flew to her mouth. Julian looked at her, his voice breaking. "That voice saved me. He saved me." Before I even knew his name, he pulled something from his coat and knelt down. Ava gasped. A simple ring, silver, engraved inside. "Still here." "I don't want to fix you," Julian said softly. "And I don't need fixing either. I just want to keep showing up until we both believe this is home." Tiny footsteps padded toward them. Liam rushed in and threw his arms around them both. "Arts just need hugs sometimes," he whispered. Ava laughed through her tears. "Yes," she said. 1,000 times? Yes. Later, as they walked under golden trees, Liam stooped to pick up a leaf. He handed it to Julian with a serious look. "You can keep this," he said, "in case your heart needs a hug again." Julian took it gently, closing his fingers around it like it was made of glass. Liam twirled beneath falling leaves, laughter ringing through the air. Ava leaned into Julian's side, her hand in his. "They didn't say, they didn't need to." And as the screen faded, a quiet voice echoed. "Sometimes the smallest hearts carry the biggest miracles, and sometimes love finds you exactly when you need it most." If this story moved you even just a little, this is what we share at Soul-Stirring Stories. Stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that even in our lowest moments, love can still find us. Subscribe for more emotional journeys. Click the subscribe button to show your love. And remember, sometimes it takes a small voice to heal a broken heart. And sometimes that voice is exactly what saves us. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.